Chapter 10. Cerelene and the Surprise Visitor. Looking out over the crowd in the great hall of the high priest, Cerelene could tell she had come upon a rare occurrence. If you were to gain an audience with the highest-ranking priest of Elion, then you either had a reservation that took months, or you were a person of importance. However, the man the young elf maiden saw looked to be neither, and to be frank, he was far from either. Garrick, as she now heard his name, looked more like a mercenary or a wandering warrior. He was missing his sword, of course. Any meeting with the high priest had weapons, even ceremonial ones, taken and held outside the hall until the audience was ended, even if you were invited. Cerelene brushed her dark red hair from her face as she stepped forward to get a better look at Garrick. He, too, had darker hair, but that was mostly where their similarities ended. His hair was brown, and his face was covered in a beard, while her hair was deep red and tied in a braid. And though they shared the same white skin, hers was silky smooth, quite the opposite to the older man's more tanned and weathered appearance. One more step, Cerelene thought, and she could hear everything being said in the great hall between the high priest, the honored brethren, and the rugged man being questioned. "I am sorry, my lady, but this is as far as you go," came a familiar voice. The elf maiden turned her head to see Alden, one of the brethren. The kindly old man had his hand raised with a small smile, a telling smile that showed he had no happiness in his actions, but it must be done. "I understand," replied Cerelene, though she was technically considered a refugee, but more of an honored guest depending on who you asked. She was still not one of the honored brethren in the inner audience chamber. The high priest of Elion received much pushback when he allowed the elf maiden to stay within the walls of the holy city almost a year ago. But he was known for his heart first, and anything that wasn't strictly stated in the scriptures was open to debate, and for that Cerelene was thankful. Cerelene struggled to see as Garrick was speaking again, though this time he was more forceful and looked surprised. The elf maiden could still only hear bits of the conversation, but the back and forth was surely getting serious. Then she laughed. It reminded her of the conversation between the high priest and Balkan, the lead brother who had opposed her sanctuary after she had arrived at the holy city with no more than the clothes on her back and a bow and arrow. Suddenly, a loud laugh by Garrick snapped Cerelene from her memory. The rugged human bowed and promptly left the hall with a Knight of Providence escort. And with the cape she saw flapping behind the knight, he was the captain of the Knights of Providence. Something of grand importance had just happened, and she'd missed it. "What happened?" whispered Cerelene to herself. Then she looked up at the brethren that kept her at bay, and whispered again, only louder, "What did I miss?" "Young elf maiden, you know I cannot tell you what transpires here," replied Alden, softly yet sternly. "However, if I were you, I would check on Azure. It has been a bit since you have seen her, has it not?" Cerelene looked at Alden, puzzled. She was as close with her falcon as the old man was with the brethren. "Cerelene, check on Azure," pushed Alden with a nod. Suddenly it dawned on her. Yes! Garrick must have come with an animal companion. He or she would be kept with Azure in the courtyard. Leaning her face up to Alden's, Cerelene whispered, "Thank you," and grabbed the old man's hand. "I do not know what you mean," replied the brethren with a quick wink. At a brisk walk, it wouldn't take too long to get to the inner courtyard, and if she ran, it would take no time at all. But Cerelene knew it would draw suspicion, even though she was regularly seen there with Azure. The thought of missing what had transpired between the high priest and the rugged human wanderer, if that's what he was, would drive her mad. After what seemed like an eternity, Cerelene reached the courtyard gate. As always, she was let in with no problem. As soon as the gate closed, a falcon screeched and took flight toward her. The female bird of prey landed on Cerelene's right forearm and sat still. "I am sorry, my lovely, but I am not here to see you. But you can come along," spoke Cerelene as she nodded to the sky and softly raised her arm up. After her companion took off, Cerelene heard a dog bark in the near distance. Looking out, she could see Garrick with the captain of the Knights of Providence and one of his men. Seconds later, the armored men turned to leave. It was perfect timing. As the knights left, it was revealed that it was no dog that had barked, but a mystic wolf. Dark as night, and even though it wasn't kept as regally as the ones she had once seen in the elven forest kingdom of Lumilathalos, it was no doubt a mystic. Garrick had knelt down and was petting the wolf when Cerelene approached. "I know I must be crazy for even thinking about doing this, Onyx," he spoke plainly, "but it just seems, well, right." The big black wolf nudged Garrick's head with his, and made a short snort which sounded like an approval. "That is a beautiful animal you have there," said Cerelene in a cordial voice. "Are you leaving him behind to be raised by the brethren? It is probably for the best. There are not many left. I can assure you of that, and that he will be well taken care of here." Garrick stood up and started to turn around. Then he laughed out, "No, we are bonded." Then at the sight of the elf he stopped and composed himself. "So it is true then. There is a lovely elf maiden staying within these walls," stated the human. "And her falcon as well," nodded Cerelene. Garrick eyed Cerelene intently for a moment. Then he continued, "You are the exiled niece of the elf queen." Cerelene opened her mouth slightly, with her eyes wide open. She tried to fix her expression, but it was too late. "No, do not try to deny it. I have been all over Danaria. Let us just say, more than once. I have heard things, rumors, and you have just told me who you are without even a word." Cerelene laughed. "Yes, you are right. I will not deny it. You know something important, something secret about me." Then she smiled. "What of you, human? Tell me something important about you." It was more of a return jab than an actual question. Cerelene watched as Garrick slammed the point of his sword into the dirt. "That is easy, my royal elf maiden," returned Garrick. "I am going to find the scepter sword for the high priest, because I have been blessed with a knowledge of where it is." And even more absurd than that statement, marveled Cerelene, was that there was not even the slightest hint of sarcasm in his voice.